Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we're going to talk about one of Batavia's, Genesee County's larger plants that was established here in the mid-20th century, and that is of Sylvania Electronics. Now, Sylvania operated a very large plant here in Batavia from 1954 to 1976 and produced all sorts of electronic devices from TVs to radios to turntables. Anything that gave you entertainment electronically probably came from Sylvania at one point, and the company does still exist, just not in Batavia anymore. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the plant here in Batavia and its impact on the community, as well as show off some of the items that were created by Sylvania while they're here in Batavia that we have in our collection. Now, the beginnings of Sylvania here in Batavia and Genesee County goes all the way back to 1953, when they started reaching out to the area about building a brand new plant. And the site that they actually favored was along Ellicott Street Road in the town of Batavia. So the chamber actually started a fundraising campaign to raise $300,000 in order to purchase the designated land from the owner, William B. Sanders. Now, this new plant was promised to be the largest Sylvania plant under one roof in the country and had the most modern and chain of fast-growing firms and most modern equipment to build it. In fact, it was stated in May 1953 in the paper, about 1,000 people from the area are slated to be employed. Batavia will be the home of the largest plant under one roof in the extensive industrial organization of Sylvania Electronic Products, Inc. The cost will be $4 million. It will embrace 422,000 square feet of floor space, more than the combined area of 8 regulation football fields. It will be located on more than 124 acres of land. Now, the ground was broken on June 3rd of 1953, and all the utilities were being put in, and eventually the cornerstone was laid on October 3rd, 1953, by Sylvania President H. Ward Zimmer. Now, production would start in the spring of the following year, 1954, and they had 600 workers working on 3 production lines, with the second starting in March and the third in June. 2 years later, workers were turning out color television sets, and in 1959, the plant was producing low-cost colored circuit sets, and even some of these were sent to international expositions, including the one in Russia at the Moscow Exposition. Also that same year, they merged with General Telephone to form General Telephone Electronics. The company also developed a satellite tracking system in July of that year and offered a cordless television set in March of 1964. And this led to greater improvements as the plant was enlarged first in 1956 and in 1962 and finally in 1969. However, around the turn of 1970, a darkness started to come over as there was reports that Sylvania was looking to build an even larger plant in Smithfield, North Carolina, which made some of the workers uneasy, as well as the local community, as it was feared that many of the jobs would be sent there. Though these fears were eased by Sylvania, they would not completely go away. And a lot of this was due to the relations between the plant and the workers, as in 1954 the workers agreed to join the Electrical Workers Union, and this caused a lot of strife and even some minor strikes when in 1958 workers actually were off the job for 2 weeks. And in 1970, management began to talk of losses as they were suffering from trade competition, though they were able to work out agreements with the workers. Then in October of 1970, they announced that the color television production was being moved to the Smithfield plant, which was a major decrease in production for the Batavia plant and signaled the beginning of the end. This led to 150 workers being laid off later the next year, and 200 more being laid off by 1972. And by 1975, things have maybe improved with the introduction of the solid-state television, but few workers were called back to work. And in November 1976, Sylvania announced that the Batavia plant was closing for good. Now, the plant would remain vacant until 1981, when the R.A. Chapin Manufacturing Works bought the huge plant for nearly $8.5 million and moved into at least the western part of the plant for their production. Now, Sylvania did not only make TVs, but they made radios and VCRs and turntables and transistor radios. They made all sorts of electronics for around the world, but a lot of it was made right here in Batavia. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of our Artifact video series, and maybe you learned a little bit more about Sylvania Electronic Company that had big impact here in Batavia from the 1950s to the 1970s. If you've enjoyed this content or any of our previous content, be sure to check us out on our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum. And if you really do enjoy it, be sure to like the videos and even subscribe to the channel, as it helps the channel out a little bit, but also gets you informed before everybody else when we do release new videos. But as always, the best way to come and learn more about Sylvania or any of the other topics that we cover is to stop by the museum and check it out for yourself. We'll be happy to share even more information with you and show the objects off firsthand.